Subject down! Subject is down!
Of the calls for justice since George Floyd's death back in May.
In a world where justice is supposed to prevail, a dark underbelly lurks within the very institutions meant to protect us. Corruption, betrayal, and a complete disregard for the oath they swore to uphold. In this video, we've detailed a chilling exposé that will send shockwaves down your spine. So, prepare for a roller coaster of emotions as we delve into the darkest corners of law enforcement and uncover the shocking stories behind 10 of the most corrupt cops the world has ever seen. From their initial rise to power, their abuse of their badges for personal gain, and the fateful moment when the gavel struck, sealing their fate. Join us as we count down the top 10 corrupt cops reacting to life sentences. You absolutely want to watch this video till the very end, so keep up. Number 10. David Oliver. In a small town nestled within Brimfield Township, the former police chief, David Oliver, found himself caught in a whirlwind of controversy. Renowned for his sharp wit and unfiltered commentary on Facebook, where he fearlessly referred to criminals as mopes, Oliver had garnered a significant following. However, his popularity took a dramatic downturn when he faced a harsh reality. A string of misdemeanor charges that painted a much darker picture of who he truly was. The charges against Oliver were grave and not to be taken lightly. Alongside the offense of unlawful restraint, he stood accused of attempted theft, simple assault, and unauthorized use of property, a startling combination that shook the community to its core. The courtroom, once a place where Oliver commanded respect, now became a battleground of judgment and condemnation. As the judge presiding over the case, a stern and no-nonsense figure, faced Oliver, he couldn't help but cast a shadow of irony. The judge, who had witnessed the former police chief's witty jabs at criminals, sardonically labeled Oliver himself a mope. This unexpected twist added a layer of poetic justice to the proceedings, as the once revered law enforcer now found himself on the receiving end of scathing remarks in a plea agreement that seemed too lenient in the eyes of Crystal Casterline, a courageous female officer who had endured the brunt of Oliver's alleged harassment. Casterline, a vibrant marathon runner who reveled in the joy of life, tearfully stood before the judge, sharing her harrowing experience. Casterline accused Oliver of hugging her, trapping her, and forcing her to press her body against his and to dance with him. Oliver denied and strongly contested many of the claims made against him. However, faced with the prospect of a protracted legal battle and the need to move on with his life, he swallowed his pride and pleaded guilty to all charges, sacrificing his defense in an effort to bring closure to the chapter that had tarnished his once illustrious career. Oliver's face betrayed his resistance during the highly anticipated hearing after reluctantly entering his no-contest plea. As the judge announced the sentence, the weight of the room seemed to press down on Oliver's shoulders. He was handed 2 years of probation, a period of strict supervision that would hover over him like an unrelenting shadow, and the requirement to make restitution for his actions. The courtroom was filled with a mix of curiosity and disdain as spectators craned their necks to catch a glimpse of the fallen officer. Once an authority figure in his uniform, Oliver now stood as a symbol of disgrace. Oliver's online fame proved to be a double-edged sword, as the charges leveled against him quickly shattered the illusion that the former police officer had carefully cultivated for himself. Number 9. Derek Chauvin. This was one name that reverberated across America in 2020, forever etched in the annals of history for his fateful involvement in the tragic demise of George Floyd. The chilling incident unfolded as Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer, placed his knee upon Floyd's neck, a brutal act that lasted not just minutes, but a harrowing 9 agonizing minutes. The footage detailing the episode ignited a firestorm of public outcry as people from all walks of life united against the pervasive issues of police brutality and racial injustice. Chauvin began his career with the Minneapolis Police Department in 2001, navigating the complexities of law enforcement. Over the course of his tenure, his actions drew attention, leaving a trail of 18 complaints in his wake. However, disciplinary action was a rarity, as only 2 of these grievances resulted in any consequence. The shadow of use-of-force incidents loomed over him, casting doubt on his methods. One particularly unsettling event unfolded in 2017, when Chauvin stood among several officers who tragically ended a suspect's life, shrouding the city in a cloud of grief. Then came May 25th, 2020, a date forever engraved upon the collective consciousness. On that fateful day, Chauvin's actions transcended the realm of misconduct and entered the realm of tragedy. George Floyd, an innocent soul, became a symbol of a broken system, a symbol that ignited the hearts and minds of millions. The event sparked protests, demonstrations, and calls for justice that resonated not only in Minneapolis, but across the entire globe. In a bustling neighborhood filled with eclectic shops and vibrant storefronts, Chauvin and his 3 fellow officers responded to a call that had interrupted the ordinary flow of the day. The report was about a man attempting to pass off a counterfeit $20 bill at a local convenience store, an act that would soon have profound consequences. As they arrived at the scene, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of suspicious activity, they spotted George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man calmly seated in the driver's seat of a parked car nearby. Little did they know that this encounter would forever alter the course of their lives and ignite a firestorm of national outrage. They quickly approached Floyd, handcuffed him, and forced him to the unforgiving ground, his face pressed into the pavement. There, amidst the asphalt and the struggle, Chauvin's actions cast a shadow that would linger for years to come. He knelt on Floyd's neck for 9 agonizing minutes, even as the dying Floyd desperately pleaded for mercy. His last words became a haunting mantra echoing through the hearts of millions. In the aftermath, justice prevailed. Found guilty on all 3 charges, the gavel fell, sealing Chauvin's fate. And with his bail revoked, Chauvin found himself confined to the confines of a cell. Finally, on that fateful day in June 2021, the world watched as the scales of justice delivered their measured response. A sentence of 22.5 years in prison, with credit given for time already served. But Chauvin was not done yet. He claimed that the jury had been tainted by bias, and the trial itself was marred by injustice. He defiantly filed an appeal, challenging the very foundation of his conviction. But his desperate attempt to rewrite the narrative has consistently been unsuccessful. Number 8. Roy Oliver. In a small suburban town called Balch Springs, a tragic incident unfolded involving a former member of the local police force. Known for his 6-year tenure with the Balch Springs Police Department, Oliver's reputation took a devastating turn when he engaged in a senseless shooting that claimed the life of a bright young soul, 15-year-old Jordan Edwards. On that fateful day, Jordan found himself innocently seated in the passenger seat of a departing car. Unknown to him, his life was about to be abruptly cut short by a hail of gunfire. Entrusted with the responsibility to protect and serve, Oliver irrationally opened fire on the unarmed teenager, shattering the peace that the town had been known for and forever changing the lives of those involved. News of this heartbreaking incident spread like wildfire, sparking outrage and demanding justice. Reacting swiftly, the Balch Springs Police Department placed Oliver on administrative leave, severing the ties that once bound him to the force. However, mere days later, the department took the definitive step to terminate Oliver's employment, a necessary act to restore faith in the community. The aftermath of this tragedy prompted a thorough investigation by the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to young Jordan's memory, they tirelessly pursued the case against Oliver. The weight of the evidence eventually led to a critical moment on May 5th, 2017, when Oliver was formally charged with murder. The wheels of justice turned quickly, and an arrest warrant was issued before the day's end. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Oliver surrendered himself, momentarily stepping into the confines of a justice system that would decide his fate. Though granted temporary respite upon posting a substantial bail of $300,000, Oliver's life had taken an irrevocable turn. The stage was set for a dramatic trial, one that would determine the extent of his punishment for the devastating loss he had caused. Yet the path to the courtroom was not without its delays, as Oliver's murder trial experienced 2 unexpected postponements, prolonging the agony and anticipation for all involved. Finally, on that summer day of August 20th, 2018, the trial commenced, grabbing the entire nation's attention. Day after day, the courtroom witnessed the emotional testimonies and vivid recreations of that tragic moment. Finally, on August 28th, the jury reached a verdict, and the resounding judgment pronounced Oliver guilty of Jordan's murder. The following day, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the judge declared Oliver's fate 15 years behind bars. However, Oliver's attorneys vowed to fight on and challenged the verdict and the severity of the sentence. Fortunately, their hopes were dashed when the Texas Fifth Court of Appeals rejected Oliver's appeal on August 10, 2020. The murder conviction and the weight of his sentence remained intact, ensuring that justice would be served and Jordan's memory preserved. Number 7. Derek Stafford. Derek Stafford was responsible for one of the most chilling crimes ever committed by a law enforcement officer. Stafford's dark legacy included the heart-wrenching death of 6-year-old Martis during a traffic stop that went horribly wrong. On that fateful November day in 2015, Stafford and his colleague engaged in a high-speed car chase after Jeremy's father, Chris Few, failed to comply with their orders to pull over. The pursuit came to a deadly conclusion when Stafford, finally catching up to Few after a 2-mile chase, unleashed a barrage of 14 shots into the vehicle, tragically claiming the life of young Jeremy. Shockingly, video footage showed that Few had his hands raised in surrender at the time of the shooting. During his trial, Stafford expressed remorse for his actions, offering an apology to Jeremy's grieving father. He claimed that had he known there was a child in the car, he would never have unleashed such lethal force. Nevertheless, the jury found Stafford guilty of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter, leaving him facing a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years, with the possibility of up to 60 years in jail. The sentence handed down to Stafford on that fateful Friday in March 2017 was a staggering 40 years behind bars. Emotions ran high outside the courthouse as the news spread throughout the community. Supporters of justice believed that the penalty was fitting, a necessary reckoning for the life senselessly taken. But amidst the sea of opinions, there were dissenting voices. Bertha Walker Andrews, Stafford's aunt, was very critical of the verdict. She decried it as a form of modern-day slavery, insinuating that her nephew had become a scapegoat for societal tensions. She was equally furious at those who prosecuted him, accusing them of denying a black man the right to defend himself against a white man. While Stafford's defense team expressed disappointment with the outcome, they clung to a glimmer of hope and maintained that their client would eventually be released. Despite the weight of his sentence, they remained confident in their ability to challenge the conviction and secure a different fate for Stafford. Number 6. Michael Dotro. Michael Dotro was more than just a police officer with the Edison Police Department in New Jersey. He was a towering figure in the community, known for his unwavering dedication and exceptional work. Joining the force in 2003, Dotro quickly proved himself and steadily ascended the ranks, reaching the prestigious position of sergeant in 2011, a testament to his abilities and commitment to upholding the law. However, Dotro's career, which was once considered promising and distinguished, came crashing down in 2017 when he found himself entangled in a web of criminal charges. The allegations against him were not trivial. He was charged with multiple serious crimes that shook the community. Dotro faced federal charges of attempted obstruction of justice and conspiracy to tamper with witnesses. The charges painted a dark picture of a man who had betrayed the trust placed in him as a police officer. In 2019, Dotro appeared in court, dressed in a somber green prison jumpsuit, signaling the loss of his freedom and the gravity of his situation. As the judge delivered the verdict, his composed demeanor remained unchanged, revealing no visible reaction. Surprisingly, there were no statements made or signs of remorse displayed by Dotro during the sentencing hearing. This lack of emotional response left many observers puzzled. They had anticipated some semblance of remorse or repentance, considering the severity of his crimes. Instead, Dotro appeared stoic and detached, failing to acknowledge the weight of his actions. However, his sentencing was met with mixed reactions. He pleaded for leniency, emphasizing his previously clean record and his desire to be a good father to his children. But the judge was not swayed by his words, handing the former police officer a harsh 20-year sentence in federal prison. The decision underscored the gravity of his offenses and the absence of guilt he displayed in the face of the consequences. Although Dotro claimed to be remorseful for his actions and acknowledged the disappointment he brought upon his family and the community, skepticism clouded his apology. Many found it hard to believe his remorse, considering the extremity of his crimes and his unwavering insistence on his innocence throughout the trial. But it didn't end there. Dotro's case became a major scandal for the Edison Police Department, exacerbating the existing scrutiny it faced due to allegations of corruption and misconduct. The department's handling of the case also came under fire, as several officers allegedly involved in the conspiracy were allowed to retire or resign without facing disciplinary action. Number 5. Daniel Hotzclaw. Daniel Hotzclaw, a name that once carried the weight of promise and athletic prowess, was born on a balmy December day in 1986 on the breathtaking island of Guam. His father, Eric Hotzclaw, commanded respect as a lieutenant in the esteemed Enid Police Department, casting a long shadow for Daniel to step into. Growing up in Enid, Oklahoma, Daniel attended the local Enid High School, where his muscular frame and unwavering determination kick-started his footballing journey. As a formidable linebacker, he etched his name in the annals of the school's history, leaving a permanent mark by shattering the previous record with an astonishing 25 tackles during a game. Fueled by his athletic achievements, Daniel set his sights on a future in professional football. However, fate had other plans in store. Undeterred, Daniel found solace in another path, embarking on a quest to serve and protect his community. He joined the ranks of the Oklahoma City Police Department, driven by an innate desire to make a difference. Little did anyone suspect that beneath the veneer of his uniform, darkness lurked. As time wore on, the true nature of Daniel's character began to reveal itself. A disquieting pattern emerged, exposing the cracks in his once promising career. Women from impoverished neighborhoods who were often overlooked and marginalized became the unsuspecting targets of his heinous acts. The police investigators pieced together a disturbing puzzle, revealing that Daniel would exploit his position to conduct background checks on women with outstanding warrants or criminal records, singling them out as his prey. The tension inside the courtroom was palpable, with each passing moment making his apprehension grow, as mirrored in the tears pooling in his eyes and the uncontrollable shivers that coursed through his body. The courtroom itself became a parlor of emotions, with victims, detectives, and attorneys who had dedicated 1.5 years of their lives to unraveling the truth, collectively holding their breath. The jury's resounding recommendation of an astonishing 263-year prison sentence rippled through the courtroom, washing away any semblance of leniency. The victims, who had endured unimaginable trauma, found solace in the outcome. While the sentence brought closure for some, others grappled with conflicting emotions. Sherry Dickerson, an unwavering advocate for the victims, wore a mask of empathy, her heart burdened by the knowledge of the destruction that had befallen Daniel's life and the collateral damage inflicted upon his family. She stated she hoped that Daniel could hopefully redeem himself and even guide other predators toward a path of transformation. Number 4. Jasper Muzianowski. Joseph Muzianowski was once renowned for being one of the most corrupt officers within the Chicago Police Department. He possessed a facade of honor and prestige that concealed his true nature. But behind the shield and uniform, he was a malignant figure who exploited his authoritative position for personal gain, entangling himself with a web of deceit and criminal activities. However, the extent of his crimes throughout his extensive 22-year career is even more astonishing than one could imagine. He collaborated seamlessly with notorious gang members, transforming their unholy alliance into a highly profitable cocaine sales ring. His extensive knowledge of the intricate underworld of gangs in Chicago gave him the necessary leverage to execute such illicit operations. He employed a team of loyal street informants to augment his network, whom he skillfully manipulated to extort drug dealers and distribute narcotics covertly. This symbiotic relationship ensured a continuous flow of illicit proceeds into his pockets, creating a sprawling criminal empire that spanned the city. Disturbingly, he was not alone in his corrupt practices and was merely a cog in a larger machinery of deceit within the Chicago Police Department. Other officers were also entangled in nefarious activities, casting a dark shadow over the city's law enforcement. Shockingly, Muzianowski, despite his vile acts, managed to accumulate nearly 60 citations for bravery, earning accolades for high-profile arrests and dismantling drug and weapon cartels. Such paradoxical recognition further concealed the extent of his treachery, as the city hailed him as a hero while he continued his horrific operations in plain sight. One of his preferred tactics involved orchestrating the sale of cocaine to unsuspecting individuals, only for his partner to conveniently apprehend them immediately after, allowing the corrupt cop to profit from both sides of the transaction. However, in 2021, his immoral crimes finally caught up with him, leading to his arrest and subsequent trial. As his family filled the courtroom, their faces were etched with anguish and disbelief. The judge, Blanche Manning, expressed her sympathy for them while sternly denouncing Muzianowski's actions. She described them as exacerbating the crack cocaine distribution operation that plagued the streets he had vowed to safeguard. Brian Nettles, the lead prosecutor in the case, meticulously recounted the extent of the disgraced officer's crimes, revealing the harrowing details of his deeds. These included not only compromising the identities of undercover police officers to gang members, but also safeguarding criminal organizations, trafficking crack cocaine, and supplying street gangs with the ammunition they needed to perpetuate violence and chaos. After being found guilty of drug conspiracy and racketeering, Muzianowski received a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would forever pay for his heinous crimes. While the city of Chicago could begin the arduous process of healing from the scars left by its most corrupt cop. Number 3. David Carrick. David Carrick is an infamous figure in the law enforcement world. Born in the beautiful county of Wiltshire, England, Carrick's upbringing was marked by the turbulent divorce of his parents during his formative years. Despite the challenges he faced, Carrick managed to secure a brief stint in the British Army in 2001 before eventually donning the uniform of a police officer in 2010. However, his true colors soon emerged. While Carrick might have possessed a badge symbolizing authority, his actions behind closed doors revealed a sinister nature that shocked even his fellow officers. As early as 2002, the Metropolitan Police received numerous petitions alleging domestic abuse against him. Astonishingly, despite the multitude of complaints regarding his conduct, Carrick managed to retain his status as an armed police officer after being recertified in 2017. Within the shadows of his position of power, Carrick prowled dating apps such as Badoo and Tinder, preying on unsuspecting women. Using his armed police officer persona as a tool of manipulation, he established relationships with these women, only to subject them to a harrowing cycle of abuse. Carrick's cruelty knew no bounds, as he subjected his victims to every form of assault, tormenting them physically and even locking them in confined spaces for extended periods. He exhibited a twisted control over their lives, dictating what they wore, where they slept, and even forbidding some from eating in several instances. The true extent of Carrick's heinous crimes came to light when another woman bravely reported him for date rape. Subsequently, he was detained and suspended from his duties as a police officer, a position he had defiled with his vile actions. However, the courtroom proceedings that followed shed further light on the depths of Carrick's depravity. Initially pleading not guilty to all charges, Carrick's facade crumbled in December 2022, when he finally admitted guilt to 49 charges, including 24 counts of sexual assault. Shockingly, his victims numbered 12 brave women who had endured unimaginable suffering at his hands. Carrick's disgusting actions drew widespread condemnation from public figures, including the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the Chief Prosecutor of the Crown Prosecution Service, who jointly expressed disgust and outrage at his relentless degradation of women and the abuse of his position. As the trial unfolded in February 2023, it became apparent that Carrick's offenses had escalated over time, clearly reflecting his growing audacity and confidence in evading justice. Ultimately, the weight of his crimes proved insurmountable, and the trial concluded with a guilty verdict. The court sentenced him to a staggering 36 life sentences, each carrying a minimum term of 30 years, plus an additional 239 days. Number 2. Zachary Wester. Zachary Wester, once regarded as a shining example of law enforcement, had a commanding presence in his sheriff's deputy uniform. His badge glistened under the Florida sun, concealing the dark secret that lurked within him. Behind closed doors, Wester had succumbed to an insidious addiction, the intoxicating allure of power. This addiction transformed him into a malevolent force, abusing his authority in unimaginable ways that would send shockwaves through his colleagues and the entire community. Convicted on a multitude of charges, including racketeering, official misconduct, perjury, fabricating evidence, and possession of controlled substances, Wester's descent into criminality was finally met with justice. On that fateful day of September 7, 2021, the gavel fell, and Wester was sentenced to 12 long years within the confines of prison walls. The haunting tale of Wester's crime spree began 4 years prior, in 2016. He would target unsuspecting motorists during routine traffic stops, forever altering their lives. Like a cunning predator, he would secretly plant narcotics on these innocent individuals, weaving a web of deceit and manipulation. The unraveling of his malevolent schemes began when a brave driver had the audacity to speak up and lodge a complaint against him. It was this complaint that sparked the investigation, plunging the community into a state of disbelief. As the investigation unfolded, the true extent of Wester's wickedness emerged. For years, he had systematically planted drugs on countless victims, forever tainting their lives with false accusations and shattered trust. In 2019, justice finally caught up with him, and he was arrested. His reign of terror finally halted. But this was where it got even more interesting. Wester's troubled past came back to haunt him and cast a dark shadow over his law enforcement career. Prior to his stint in Jackson County, he had been forcibly terminated from a different law enforcement agency in Florida due to his failure to meet agency standards. One would assume that such a history would raise red flags, preventing him from ever wearing a badge again. Unfortunately, the system failed, allowing him to find a new home as a deputy in Jackson County, where he would continue his malevolent activities. Throughout his trial, Wester clung stubbornly to his claim of innocence, defiantly asserting that he had been set up, vehemently denying any involvement in planting illegal substances. But the walls of evidence closed in around him, overwhelming the courtroom with undeniable proof of his guilt. The jury, left with no choice but to confront the magnitude of his crimes, found him guilty on an astonishing 19 counts. Throughout the trial, Wester's demeanor spoke volumes about his character. Arrogant and dismissive, he showed little remorse for the lives he ruined, appearing more concerned with preserving his tarnished reputation than accepting the weight of his crimes. As the final verdict echoed through the courtroom, a wave of satisfaction washed over the victims and their loved ones. It was a bittersweet victory, a glimmer of closure in the face of an immeasurable trauma. Number 1. Marcus Eberhart. In the small town of East Point, Michigan, where life usually unfolded peacefully, the events of 2019 shattered the tranquility and thrust Marcus Eberhart, a former police officer, into the spotlight. Known for its tight-knit community, East Point was left reeling from the tragic incident that unfolded that fateful day. Marcus Eberhart, a seasoned officer with a stern countenance, had patrolled the town's streets for years, symbolizing law and order. However, behind his badge and uniform lay a simmering reputation of being a relatively aggressive enforcer. His actions during the arrest of William Marshall, a 38-year-old man with a troubled past, would etch their names into the annals of the town's history. William Marshall, a complex figure with a history of battling narcotics abuse, had become a familiar face in the local police records due to his numerous non-violent offenses. The clash between Eberhart and Marshall, both carrying their own burdens, was a collision of troubled souls. During the trial, the details emerged, painting a vivid picture of the ill-fated encounter. It was revealed that Eberhart had deployed his taser on Marshall in a moment of heightened tension and fear. What started as a desperate attempt to subdue the agitated man spiraled into an excessive use of force as Eberhart held the electric charge for an excruciating 40 seconds, far exceeding the limits dictated by law enforcement policy. The courtroom became a stage for justice as the prosecution and defense presented their cases. The prosecutor argued passionately that Eberhart's excessive force directly led to Marshall's untimely demise, while the defense contended that Eberhart had acted in accordance with his training, placing the blame on Marshall's narcotics use and underlying health conditions. The jury, burdened with the weight of the decision, rendered a verdict that echoed through the state of Michigan. In a landmark ruling, Marcus Eberhart became the first police officer in the state's history to be found guilty of a crime for using a taser. The verdict, guilty of involuntary manslaughter and misconduct in office, shook the community to its core. Following the verdict, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Stoic and composed, Eberhart seemed to suppress any immediate reaction, masking the internal storm within him. His lawyer expressed deep disappointment with the jury's decision, but little did they know that the sentencing hearing would hold an even greater surprise. When the time for sentencing arrived, the judge's gavel fell with an unexpected weight. Eberhart was sentenced to life in prison, those words reverberating through the stunned silence. Eberhart's fate was sealed. The reality of a lifetime behind bars had just begun to sink in. In an emotional statement released after the trial, Marcus Eberhart expressed genuine remorse for his actions and their devastating impact on Marshall's grieving family. His words were heavy with regret and resonated with a sincerity that could not have been feigned. For the Marshall family, the verdict brought a bittersweet relief. Sarah Marshall, William's sister, acknowledged the accountability the justice system had finally imposed on Eberhart, but knew all too well that it could never bring back her beloved brother. Eberhart's case transcended the boundaries of East Point, becoming a glaring spotlight on the use of force by police officers and the urgent need for accountability. The echoes of his trial spread across America, sparking debates and calls for change within law enforcement agencies. Which of these cop reactions to their sentencing did you find the most intriguing? Let us know your answers in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.